Hello, my name is Sam, and welcome back to another video talking about Tapforms 5 for iOS and Mac. I'm doing a follow-up video from my previous video where we talked about how to take a note field, split it up, and turn it into, in our case, multiple records, and process the data out that came in a number of formats. So we've got this really long example here, but we've got the sample with some data in it. Now, one of the original examples was that there would be three potential fields at the bottom here for each of these. And whilst the example only had one, and we built an example, built a script based on that example, what we're going to do is modify the example a little bit with my own creativity, add some extra values. So we've got 3 here, 2 here, 3 comments here, and then we've kept this one as is. And what we're going to do is change the script to be able to handle this sort of different space delimited entries. Now, if you watch the original video, you'll note that we used the line index to figure out what line we were on. We started at the start, we processed the lines, but we ignored the empty lines. Now, the empty lines were delimiters, and we said at the time, we'll come back to that. And this is the video in which we're going to have a look at that. We can also see here we've got our line index that we increment. We figure out what line we're on. We do the right logic for that line. And when we get to line 7, we're at the end of this stanza. And now I'm going to borrow that stanza word because I'm going to need something to keep track of what sort of block we're in. So we're going to grab that. We log it out and we do that. Now, as we're going to start developing this again, I'm going to comment out this line, or these sets of lines, which is basically the sets that add a new record to the field and then set each of the values. So we hit run on that. We can see that we're outputting some of the data. Now, since I've already changed it, you'll note that event date says no comment. And event date here is RAF bomber accidents, and squadron is now a date. Because we've already changed it a little bit, it's throwing this bit of logic off kilter, and the values are wrong. So let's start by changing things a little differently to, instead of ignoring those new lines, what we're going to do is handle them. Now, to do that, we need to keep track of where we are in our sort of processed document, right? So when we process each of the lines, we start at line index 0. And so we're going to need another variable for what block or stanza or grouping we're up to, and we're going to call that block index equals 0. Block index is the block that we are processing in the field. I don't know. And so what we're going to use this block index for is each time we get a new line, we're going to do block index plus plus, right? We're going to increment the block index. And so instead of ignoring empty lines, increment block index each empty line. Instead of handling it that way, we're gonna basically see use each line to increment it. We're still gonna continue, I think, for the moment, but let's do that, and we need to do one other thing, I think, which is we're going to log. We're going to log the block index. Where do we want to put that? Let's put that here. Current block index. Line. We'll do that. Block index there. So we found a blank line. We're going to increment it, and our current block index is that. Let's hit run on that. See what that does. Okay, so found blank line. We started at 0. We went to 1, 2, 3, etc., etc., etc. This is still wrong, but that's okay. We now have a block index to deal with. So we've got a blank line. We've processed it, and we're able to do something useful there. Now, line index in this context needs to change, because what we actually need to do now is switch on the block index. So previously, we only had one block, and as we processed each line in that block, we incremented this. So let's grab all of that for the moment, I think. We're going to have case 0, which is our new block index. And then we had a switch statement for the line inside of that block index. So let's just hit save for a second. So block index is going to be 0. Line index is going to be 0, 1, 2, 3. When we hit here, block index is going to be 1. But our line index is still going to be set. But we're actually wanting to join these together into multiple values. So let's pull that back out. And I'm not sure I want to put line index incrementing there, but it is for all of that. So maybe we leave it there. Does that line up? It does. We'll put a break here. And then, that's why my indenting is off. There we go. That feels better. And we'll do a default case here. Console.log unknown block index break. Okay, let's do that. We're never going to hit this though, because, and let's just run this to see what happens. We increment the block index, found the blank line, but we never, now you'll notice that we're not outputting this. And the reason for that is when we're not incrementing line index anymore. So line index gets stuck at the value. We go past block 0, and then we just keep incrementing, and when we're in this state of we don't actually know where we are. So we need to handle when block index is greater than 2. I think is the right one there. Because when we look at our data, block index is going to be 0, block index is going to be 1, block index is going to be 2, and then we're going to have a new line, and then block index here will be 3. So our exit case for this loop now becomes if block index is greater than 2. Block index becomes 2, we're at the end of the stanza. We reset the line index to 0, reset the block index back to 0, equals 0, and we continue forth. Now, let's run this and see what we get back out. So we get some unknown block indexes. We have our event date, which looks like it's processed our data correctly, except for our comments and damage type fields aren't set because we're not processing that anymore. We have a second one, but we don't have a third one. Now, why don't we have a third one? Let's hit save and have a look. Well, we're changing the block index each time we hit a new line. So we process the first one, we hit the new line, and then we're on to the second, new line, new line, new line, onto the third, new line, new line. There's no more empty lines after this. This is the end of the record. So we're going to have to add or change where we handle this so that we have the right values. We have the ability to jump back and reset the state. So what we're going to do is move this block of code up to its own dedicated function. We're going to call it create record, and the first step is we're going to put that in. What we actually want to do is take that if statement out, and we want to make it just resetting the fields. And then what we want to check here is if the block index becomes 2, we want to create record and then continue. And actually what we want to do at the very end of our loop is one more create record. And we'll hit run on that, and let's see what we get back. Okie dokie, we have one event here. We have a second one here that looks correct. And then we have a third one here at the end with all of the data. Okay, so creating that function has worked. We're calling into it when we need to call into it here. And then at the very end, we're calling into it here before we save all of our changes, and that's correct. Sweet. Now, we're using a little bit of magic here in that we can, because these are essentially in the outer scope for this script, this function can still get to them and reset those fields. So when we moved the extracted this bit of code into its own function, everything continued to work properly because we can still access the variables from that outer scope. So let's keep going. We've refactored this a little bit. Now we need to handle block index 1 and block index 2. So we know that that's going to be 1 break, and we're going to hit 2 break. So the first one is our damage type, and what we'll just do is put the line and console.log comment and then the line, and let's just see what that does. Okay, damage type is blank, not quite what we're after. RAF bomber losses, comment is blank, and then no comment. Interesting. So that means that what's happening up here is we used to have a continue when we hit the new line. When we found the blank line, we took that out because we were changing things up. But that's now caused a new bug where we process this blank line, and we don't want to process the blank line. So what we're going to do is we're going to delete this and change it so that we still call create record if it is if we're at block index 2, if we've seen our third new line, I should say, and then otherwise we still continue. So we're still skipping the blank lines, which is good. Okay, cool. And now we've updated damage type, comment, and then we've got our 3 lines here and our 3 lines here. Very good. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to we're going to join these lines together so that they form a variable that we can then put into a single note field. Now, to do that, we have 2 ways of doing it. We can concatenate these lines together, treat them as a string, But what I actually want to do is use an array, and we're going to put this up here. And we're going to call it damage type lines, and that's going to be an array, which is square brackets. And we're going to do comment lines, and that's going to be a square bracket as well. And the reason I want to do this is it allows me to append to this array, and then I can join and put new lines in later. So damage type lines are each of the lines in the damage type field, and then comment lines are each of the lines in the comment field. Comments. So save that. Now, in here, we need to do some work because we need to join them together. So as we're building this object, we need to update parsed data damage type to equal damage type lines dot join with a new line. So /n means new line to JavaScript, and we use join, and what that does is it puts each of the entries in this array into a string joined by this new line type, and comment lines dot join based on a new line. So basically, we're doing the opposite. We're doing the opposite of what the split did before. Where's our split? So when we split on the new line, it made each line in the thing, in the text field, its own entry in an array. Join is basically the reverse of split, and we're joining these entries back together with the new line, and then we're setting it into our parsed data. Once we've done that, we need to reset the variables so that the next time through they're empty and have different entries. And in fact, actually, let's put this down at the bottom. Similarly here, reset the lines to be empty arrays. So same concept here. We need to reset it each time we loop through. Now, when we process these, we need to append to it. So damage types type lines dot append line, and then comment lines dot append line. So save and run. Let's see what this looks like. Append is not a function. Oh, it's push, of course. Push. Okay, let's run that. Okay, so we've got our no comment line, RAF bomber losses, and let's have a look here. Found blank line, damage type, found blank line. Damage type RAF bomber accidents /n for new line, additional value, no comment. So that worked. Number 3 is RAF bomber damage, bomber accidents, annotated entry, comment, no comment, still no comment. Damage type RAF bomber damage, bomber accidents, annotated entry. Comments has no comment twice with 1. Okay, so we probably made a mistake somewhere. We said comments lines, and it should actually be comment lines. Damage type lines. Okay, let's try this again. Okay, first one, date, squadron, that all looks correct. Damage type 1, 2, comments 1. Second one has 3 and 3, so let's have a look here. Comment damage type 1, 2, 3, comments 1, 2, 3, and then for our last one, damage type 1, and then comments 1. Okay, cool. So it looks like we're now processing that. Let's take out our debugging statements. So we had this damage type here. We'll take that out and we'll run this again. Found blank line. Let's get rid of that as well. Could leave that in for debugging later, but that one's sort of up to you. And we can see that now we've handled that. We've got the new lines. Sweet. So at this point, let's uncomment our saving and see. Save. Cool. We ran it. It worked. And now when we have a look, we can see that damage type actually has multiple entries. And we might actually want to change this now to be a notes field, which is designed to have multiple lines versus the text field, which obviously we can see it worked. But a notes field is sort of really the right one here. We can leave it as plain text as well because we don't expect it to be formatted, just to make things a little easier. And that's it. So we've updated our script. We now handle multiple entries. We could change it one more time if we didn't want to reuse that same text field. If we wanted to split each of those lines in individual fields, we could go back and do that using a very similar technique with the line index, just continuing to increment that line index and then figuring out which, resetting it potentially back to 0, and then for each of the lines, mapping that back to a field that we care about, similar to how we've done it elsewhere. I think this is reasonably elegant because it feels like they should be together in my mind. Like each of these 3 lines feels like roughly it's the same logical field. So we're processing that, throwing it together into a field, and handling that in a way that I think makes sense. So to step back through what we achieved in this video, we updated the script we had in the previous episode to be able to handle these new lines properly. We're now processing the multi-line entries automatically. We're handling if there's 1, 2, 3, ultimately as many lines as is required automatically on the fly and putting them into that notes field that we've now changed the type of. Again, powerful feature of Tapforms to be able to change the type of many of these things on the fly, especially if you're converting between compatible types like a text field and a notes field. Very easy to move between the two. And now we're able to handle the case that was presented in here with multiple entries, field 11, 12, 13, and 14, 15, 16. If this video was interesting to you, please give me a thumbs up. If it wasn't interesting, give me a thumbs down. The algorithm will recommend it less. If you've got feedback, please leave a comment here. And if these videos are interesting in general, please hit the subscribe button. I do upload semi-ad hoc. I'm trying to get to a roughly weekly schedule with these. So each week there's a new video coming out. So hit the subscribe button if you want to see more. Thanks for watching. Happy tap forming.